Good day, good day, good day. Pasha, Paroh, thank you for tuning. All right. And today what we're going to talk about, we're going to be discussing the intriguing concept that just 3% of the population, which we talked about here before, it was written that just 3% of the population fought in the Revolutionary War. We know that's kind of, they say it's because they were talking about those who served in George Washington's army, what have you. 3% was the number there that was needed to create the change. We know they wrote, we don't know, we weren't there, but we know they wrote that roughly less than 3% participated in the Boston Tea Party. So we know 3% is that magic critical mass number, right? So guess what that means? Because you heard me talking about the 3% a couple episodes. And we've been talking about critical mass is needed for change. So, surprise, business owners, you are America's army. And I mean business owners, as we talked about before, not what we identified to be subcontractors or basically employees without benefits. And for those that aren't certain of the difference, the business owner owns the full business. Normally it has some creative aspect, something tangible that they create themselves. You're a producer. You produce something and you handle the whole process through delivery to the client. It doesn't mean you don't have employees working for you or doing steps or whatever, but it means that you own the entire business. Versus there's a lot of people that call themselves business owners, but they may be your financial advisors. They may be your Primerica, your health and your insurance people. They don't actually own the product and service that they're giving you. They're just kind of like a task facilitator that's acting as a subcontractor for another corporation. And they might have a logo and a brand name and and all this stuff, but they scared as fuck to have an opinion because they can't talk because they have employee type status. So I only really want to deal with business owners who own a business and have freedom of thoughts and speech. Because that's going to be the 3% that's going to change the nation and the world. And ironically, I was doing some research for this particular episode and came across the number that they quoted as 9.6 million people is the actual number that they give. And, you know, I'm okay with, we don't know what we don't know. These are statistics they came up with. I didn't do my own survey. But 9.68 million is roughly 3%. And it dawned on me really quick because in one of the other episodes, a couple of the episodes, we did the math based on them saying that supposedly there's a little over 300 million people here, which who knows, right? Boils down to roughly 10 million people. So 9.68 million people is roughly 3% of the nation. That's roughly the exact percentage that we need to critical mass create change. Now it makes sense why the Most High has positioned me in this weird space that I'm in to talk to business leaders and business owners and conglomerates and CEOs and departments of state. All right. So let's get into it. Because where I want to start is, where does keynote speaker? I'm gonna start calling me keynote speaker from now on. Pasha Paroh. All right. I'm gonna take this message on a world tour like a rock star. So where I want to start is the difference between, or let's say, employment and self-employment. And the reason I want to start there is because those who don't know their history, you're familiar with this quote, are doomed to repeat it. And a lot of people are considering the moment that we're in currently to be significantly parallel to or worse than the preceding days to the Great Depression, which is kind of undeniable in many attributes. So I wanted to look into that. It's some hard to say answers, as normal when you go into the past. Some places are saying that there were more self-employed people because people were working the farms and working on their small businesses that they had in local towns and stuff, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Some places are saying that prior to the Great Depression, the U.S. economy was a mix, which we know, of self-employment and wage, but they're saying that there was more wages. All right. What we know is that many people were working agriculture and at least small businesses and manufacturing to some degree. Then this economic, quote unquote, economic boom of the 1920s supposedly led us to significant industrial growth and urbanization, increasing wage earning jobs in factories and offices, in contrast to the current U.S. economy, which is more service oriented and basically has fewer self-employment opportunities and higher concentration of wage earning jobs, is the hearsay. Okay. So what we talk about here is we talk about the legacy. All right. We talk about the legacy. So the legacy is passed down from generation to generation. All right. So the United States passed down this legacy from some opportunities that were created in the Great Depression. Right? Do you think that, have you considered that maybe you have the same luxury at this time? How many of us look at it like that? So what the issue is, though, is that it's going to give the opportunity, and this is why we got to pull together. And this is why the contractors, the subcontractors, when I had the conversation on Alignable, that there were so many of them. Like, most of Alignable is just subcontractors. They just don't know it. Right? And or they know it and they don't want to accept the truth. Right? Which is okay, but it's cancerous. Because again, they can't speak for themselves. They're afraid, they're scared, because they're still operating in the mindset of an employee, because that's technically what they are. They're just an employee without benefits and 401ks and everything else that they were supposed to get from doing what they're doing for the company. Right? So what that's going to do, though, is when you look at what the Great Depression allowed the government to do, you had a great intervention, so to speak, because the Great Depression led to a shift in the role of the government in the economy that wasn't there before. You know, the New Deal programs, right? Implemented in the 30s. Okay. What was that? President Franklin, right? Roosevelt. I got my notes here. You know, I got my notes because I want to be true. And I don't want to miss nothing. I want you to get it all, so it makes sense. All right. So FDR gave them the New Deal in the 30s, aimed to provide relief, recovery, and reform. which is dangerous because then you have to, if you're not careful, you become a political subdivision and be property of the United States, right? So that was an interesting time period because these programs included initiatives such as the Works Progress Administration, which created jobs, built infrastructure, and the Social Security Act, which established the safety net for the elderly and unemployed that's quickly evaporating today. So the US government today still continues to play a significant role in the economy. The Fed almost spent $6.2 trillion in the fiscal year 2023, resulting in a $1.7 trillion deficit that I guess you get the bill for. The Congressional Budget Office supposedly projected a deficit of $1.5 trillion for 2024, right? But you're the one with the poorest credit score. So then we got to also go back to the Great Depression and see how the labor and social reforms took place. Because you got to know what we're going to go into. So let's look at the past. Actually, you see it already happening, most of us. But we got people around us who just, they plugged in. My new thing is this, right? My new thing is this. For the people that's like, oh, we unplugged. I think it's the other way around. I think the issue is that we're actually plugged into source. So we see all this differently. The United States citizens have unplugged from source and plugged into United States mentality. That's why they can't get the American vibe. That's why they seem to be our adversaries no matter what we do, what we talk about, how positive we are, how much we want to help. They always find a way to have something wrong, to have a conflict. Right? Because they're naturally against everything that America stands for. They just don't know it because of the propaganda and the brainwashing. But now, what we got to do is we got to look at the situation of, hold on, let me get you some fresh eye candy here, right? Get you some fresh artwork. Let's go back to labor and social reforms. Because during the Great Depression, and this is actually not like negative view of what you would call your government. You got to realize that the Roman maxim of law in Latin, Baltimere Deceptor, Baltimore something, stood for the world wished to be deceived, so let them be. And translated in today's modern terms, what that means is, for entertainment purposes, ignorance of the law is no excuse. So everything that you people cry about behind closed doors and then go try to smile about as if you didn't have that feeling yesterday and then tell me Pasha's the bad guy because he stays true and speak this reality 24/7 because it's what he observes in real life. It's your user error that allows you to feel the uncomfort that makes you not want to speak in public. So, labor and social reforms. The Great Depression highlighted the need for labor rights and social protection. The New Deal introduced measures such as unemployment insurance and agricultural subsidies, which is still wreaking havoc today, right? Because it's those same agricultural subsidies that had them farmers throwing away tons of potatoes not to sell them under threat that they wouldn't get their subsidy. So, yes, the New Deal introduced measures such as unemployment insurance and agricultural subsidies to support those affected by economic downturn. These reforms laid the foundation, quote unquote, for the modern social safety net and established the idea that the government should act in times of economic crisis. Right? Excuse me. Fast forward to today. Labor force participation rate 62.5%, January 24th is the hearsay. The healthcare industry is projected to experience significant job growth, they say, due to the aging population and expanded insurance coverage. So the major reforms to Social Security and Medicare are not expected in the near term due to political landscape. We did the video that show you that that's what the current war is all about with the small business. If you haven't seen that, just check that out on the channel. It's there for you. You know, because when people be like, oh, Pasha, you know, sometimes you have more currency than you had today, and we didn't see you throw any parties or you didn't do anything for the community that we think that, you know, what did you do? Well, it's a whole bunch of lessons here for you that could free you from captivity, but you're too much wanting to have a drink at a club. So I don't know. That's what I was into 20 years ago. Right now, I'm nation building. I'm trying to free the people. So if your interest is partying on a Saturday night, if that's what you live for, then you might not see the value of what Pasha talk about, what Pasha do. You might not be one of the 10 million small business owners. You might be one of the subcontractors living for the weekend because you still feel like an employee in an enslaved mindset. You don't know what to do. So let's look at the financial regulations. The stock market crash in 1929 and the subsequent economic crisis led to increased scrutiny and regulation in the financial sector, right? The SEC was established to oversee and regulate the securities industry, aiming to prevent fraud and promote transparency in financial markets. In case you haven't seen a pattern here, you can rule out of fear or create a problem, or there happens to be a problem. You pick if it was created or happened to just exist, and then you provide a solution. You've all heard this before. You guys are the wisest. So federal banking regulators have signaled today that supervisory scrutiny of the financial institutions is expected to increase in 2024. The regulatory regime and risk management frameworks are struggling to keep pace with technological innovation, particularly in relation to digital assets and cryptocurrencies. So in case you didn't realize, it's a lot of parallels, like infrastructure development. In the New Deal, right, there was this focus on infrastructure development. Thousands of schools, libraries, parks, roads, and bridges were built, repaired, leaving a lasting impact on the economy or the country's infrastructure. And I showed you in the video that I did on North Carolina how that backfired for us. Those that remained silent allowed it to go the way it did when they said, we're going to spend money on schools and infrastructure. And everybody either acquiesced or said, yay. And then 8 years later, North Carolina's personal freedom ranking had dropped from 13th to 33rd in the nation as a byproduct of the small print of what you celebrated and getting thousands of, well, we didn't get the thousands all in North Carolina, but comparing it to the New Deal, the thousands of schools, libraries, parks, roads, bridges built, repaired, right? Now you don't got no freedom because they wrote in a bunch of captivity into it because you were too busy at the club. In 2023, the federal government spent $44.8 billion, they say, on infrastructure and transferred an additional $81.5 billion to states for infrastructure projects. Over 40,000 infrastructure projects have been announced, covering more than 4,500 communities in all 50 states, District of Columbia, and Native American tribal areas. Let's just collapse everybody's freedom, right? Because they're not paying attention to what's real, what's true. They just want to sound like they're right. I should do a video on that. The difference between being right and being true. Let me get you some more eye cam. Let me get you a refresh here. There you go. So the shift in public perception with the Great Depression basically had a huge impact on the mindset of the American people, as you read in history, and those who lived through it that may be with us now. Many individuals who lived through the era developed a sense of caution and frugality. The experience of economic hardship led to distrust of the banks, a preference for cash transactions. Kind of guess that's maybe why they want to go to digital currency right now for entertainment purposes, comic applause, comic relief. The public perception of the economy in the U.S. in 2024 is largely negative. A significant portion of Americans view the current state of the economy as poor and or not excellent at all. Public frustration with the inflation has become the central issue, with many Americans expressing unhappiness that average prices are still about 19% higher than when President Joe Biden took office. Pasha for president? Yeah, I wrote that song, kind of, sort of. But I'm an American. Notice when they give this information, they always talk about the U.S. is doing this, and then they say Americans. I mean, if you read between the lines, you know, I'm not the one that made this up, this difference. We the people. So, what does all this mean for you? Right? What it means for you is there's actually a great opportunity for those who aren't afraid to be part of the 3%, to be part of America's army, to be part of 10 million people just like you. Ready to establish our legacy. Because the technological advancement of the digital revolution, similar to how things changed for the Great Depression, it's going to significantly lower the barriers to entry for starting a business. Yeah, sure. I'll be happy to do your branding, your psychology-infused logos when you get there, when your heart beats to the city's pulse that allows you to make the decision to start your own. With the internet and various software tools, it's now easier to reach a global audience, manage operations, and scale a business. See, that's why Alignable didn't really get what I was saying 3-4 years ago. And, you know, like little kids, they laugh at stuff that they don't understand. You know, Remember, like the kids in the back laughing and at sexual education. They still young minded. It was funny to them, right? So when you give them the intercourse of commerce before they're mature enough to handle it, they're funny about it. So when Pasha said, look, we're going to take our little borders here and we're going to look at our union that we have, our different organizations, companies, small businesses. We're going to align them in a process of support and supply chain. And we're going to go look at the world map and we are going to target places, items, small businesses on the map, and we are going to bring them home to our borders. We are going to treat ourselves as if we have a national domestic product, a gross domestic product for our little section of the world. And we are going to conduct international trade as if it was domestic versus non-domestic. They didn't understand the language, Hassan. So they go and get J Integrity, smiley suit guy, because it makes them feel good like Joe Biden. And then everything fucking falls apart. But that's fine, because what we need, my term was done. And then the more I looked at it, that platform was done for me too. I'd outgrown it mentally and more. So now it's time for me to reach a more sophisticated audience, a more precise group of people, the 3%, the 10 million small business owners that is America's army. The proving grounds was alignable. The proving grounds was what you've been doing in your life for the last 5 years. The job that you worked that you really didn't like, but you learned some stuff from it that you're going to be able to take into the community and build as a master builder and create the sustainable communities that we need to be the supporting foundation for us to reduce the codependency on large government and big corporations, to bring it back in line with reality. In our side of things, they can still exist. We just need to have our stuff together. The people that want to remain under that umbrella shall do so. Because if they want to be orphans, then let them be orphans. We just need to build our own because we know who we are. We're not calling ourselves small business owners and just being task managers. We're real producers. We're Americans. We know the difference. So, shall we continue to changing consumer behavior? With the let me give you the right slide here. I got a slide for you. It changed a lot of behavior, right? Of consumers. Creating new needs and opportunities. So just like anything else, when businesses can adapt to those changes and meet these emerging needs, you have the potential to thrive long term. All right? So we need to take advantage of that. Excuse me. Now, government support, cringeworthy, right? But we know the 14th Amendment. So you have equality in a jurisdiction such as along with your foreign status even. for entertainment purposes. So in response to the economic impact of the mask era, many governments are offering financial support to small businesses if you wish to go that route. And that includes loans, grants, tax breaks, which can provide a much needed lifeline for new businesses. All right. Now, we talked about how innovation was under attack as the second most distressed group of the small business population was technology and innovation. When you look at the map of, was it up to 49% of small business owners struggling to pay their rent? The challenging times often spur innovation. So maybe some opposing force learned from the Great Depression that innovation comes through the challenging times, and maybe that's why the alignment of I'm not saying it was targeted, but coincidentally, the second most impacted industry in the small business sector struggling to pay their rent is technology and innovation. And as a byproduct of that, if the people can't innovate for ourselves, then we would be subjected to what is delivered to us, like kindergartners at lunchtime in a parochial school. So businesses that can create solutions to the problems posed by the current environment may be well positioned for long-term success. Talk to me if you have ideas. I would like to see them implemented and scaled. Because you are America's army. You are America's army. Now, if you want a real life example, look at Hewlett Packard. Bill Hewlett, Dave Packard founded HP in 1933, they say, towards the end of the Great Depression in the garage, kind of like Jobs, right? Apple, you know. And it's now one of the largest leading technology companies, they say. Started in the garage with an investment of $538 at the time, and their first product was an audio oscillator. And I guess $538 is probably like equivalent to $20,000 a day. Who knows? Well, I didn't do the math. All right. Procter & Gamble is another example for you. It was founded before the Great Depression, but the research shows that it was things that they made strategic decisions during the Great Depression that snapped for their growth. So what I need you to learn there is that sometimes you feel stagnant, but just being able to be there, to be in position is the key. Because if you weren't in position, so if you feel stagnant right now, don't worry about it. You were in position. Just keep going. Because Walt Disney was founded in 23, but it was during the Great Depression that it released its first feature-length film, animated, Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, and that is what allowed Disney to take off. Okay? So what are the motivations to shift from self-employment to wage-earning jobs that they gave the people during the Great Depression that allowed them to have the acceptance and the acquiescence to want to live life of a wage earner in exchange of fighting the battle of legacy of the self-employed? Well, it was things like job security and stability. At the time, they were traditionally seen as jobs, that is, to be more secure and stable than self-employment. But now, with the rise of automation, outsourcing to India with the new trade agreement, China past trade agreement, and economic instability have changed this notion. Many companies seem to be downsizing, restructuring, and or closing, leading to job losses. So job security is out the window. It's no longer a guarantee in your current society. So you might as well shop with us. This is America. Bring your intangibles and let us integrate you into the future. In the past state, career advancement opportunities was what they were looking for, because often with a job you had provided a clear path of opportunities for advancement. You used to feel like you could go in, start at the bottom, what they call an entry-level position. You could work your way up to the top. You could retire and you might, get a boat or a gold Rolex. Well, they call it flattening of organizational structures, and the increased competition has put that notion in the recycle bin. Those opportunities are less available. Chances are you're not going to get one. They're now giving out acrylic plaques for 30 years. Congratulations. What about labor rights and protections? Because that was important back then. Typically, jobs are protected by labor laws, providing workers the rights and protections. However, ask those general contractors I was telling you about, as far as like the financial advisor that you talk to who don't own the business, but they think they do, or the insurance agent that didn't create the product that they sell into you. These protections are being eroded due to deregulation and the rise of the gig economy, where the workers are often classified as independent contractors rather than employees. But see, they all thought I was crazy when I was telling them 2 years ago that they weren't business owners. They were task facilitators. That's what I was distinguishing. That's why we can't talk to emotional people as Americans. We have trouble speaking to United States citizens because they have emotional attachments to beliefs without knowledge of the truth. So when they don't want to hear the truth, they blame you. Thus, they don't want to be around you. Thus, we have segregation. Social distancing. Because of the disconnect of the informative socially influenced versus the normatively socially influenced, who live, breathe, and die their addiction to being accepted in a society that they don't even know what it is. Which brings us to benefits and Social Security. Let me give you some fresh eye candy. Hold on. How about that one? So benefits and Social Security, that used to be why people wanted to go to work for a job. The benefits. Usually they came with benefits like health insurance, retirement plans, and paid leave. However, many companies are now cutting back on these too, as benefits to save costs. And additionally, we did the video, we showed you Social Security is going down. It's not going to be here for long. Additionally, it's under strain due to aging populations and financial pressures. So now we've checked off job security and stability, career advancement opportunities, labor rights and protections, benefits and Social Security are all off the list of reasons of why people used to go get a job. That safety, that protection, that smell of fresh air doesn't exist anymore. Just like the reduced administrative burdens, wage earning jobs used to free individuals from the administrative tasks associated with running their own business. But with the advent of technology and online platforms, you can click it and forget it, right? Managing these tasks has become easier and less time consuming. The economic factors used to be that jobs provided a steady income, which is very attractive in an uncertain economy for many. But wage stagnation is what you risk. How many people do you know got a job? It felt good when they got in. Then they come talking about they did some average study of your zip code and found out that the inflation cost was 2.1%. So they're giving you 2% increase on the cost of living, but then the news tell you that inflation went up 19% last year. That means that you are at an 18% deficit from what you were making last year to what you can live by this year. And then what about next year? So if it goes down another 15% and they only give you 2 years down the road, you went from where you were at to being 25 to 30% less buying power because you want to have the peace of mind of having a title. That's really all you got is a title and a bunch of stress in a toxic workplace. For what? The rising cost of living made it difficult for many to make ends meet, even with the steady paycheck. So yes, 39% of the small business owners are reported to be women. 60% roughly are reported to be men, and the average self-employed, not the average task facilitator, but the average self-employed is 41 years old. So it take you some time to go through the issues of life to realize, man, I need to do something else. And when you get to that point, whether you 25 or you 50, I want you to contact me. I'm Pasha Paroh. There's 9.68 million others just like you. And we're America's army. Welcome to the future. Thank you for tuning.